Hey, Shishis.
Hey,
It's Kristina and Courtney back
hey
for
y'all.
another
Back
episode.
with another one.
Yeah, this one, girl, I'm super excited about this one. Number one, it's trending, but number two, there's a personal connection for me. I'll say personal and professional. So today's episode is going to be discussing a couple of things, but more so the trend that we're seeing with violence and threats of um, violence against students in schools, and really the uphill battle that we're fighting in education in this country right now. I think there are so many battles that we fight every day as educators. But this one is specifically tied to safety and the well-being of students and staff all across the country. So the first thing that we're going to jump into is the TikTok challenge that has gone viral, where there was a threat across the nation of students showing up and enacting violence on other students and staff at their school buildings.
And I think with it's important to note with this TikTok challenge, what the kids were saying. So I personally have a TikTok account. It's like the young people.
Yeah, for the youth. The youth.
Hey, listen, it's for research. I'm in marketing, so it's research. Okay.
Research. Okay. Keep it. You're just trying to make sure your roots stay young. It's all good.
So what the young people were saying was that this TikTok challenge is that they were all unanimously all over the country were going to call the schools and make these threats of shootings. They were all going to call the schools and make these bomb threats. And it actually started off as like a small joke because I guess I'm assuming Christmas vacation or something is coming up or something
Yep.
next week or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
so it grew into we want to go on Christmas vacation early. So as a collective all over the nation, let's do this TikTok challenge, and we're all going to go ahead and start calling the school with these empty or real threats. You never know these days, you know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
guess that took place today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it did. I luckily was not in town. Had to head out a couple of days early to start my Christmas vacation. But my heart was definitely with my colleagues back at my school. We had parents reaching out even before, I left for vacation, just asking about whether or not they should send their kids. And of course, naturally, as someone who works in schools, I'm very concerned about our students. And then the human part of me is also concerned about my staff, and also what would I do if something were to go down?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different, education is so hard for so many different reasons. This is not the episode to go down the rabbit hole of that conversation, but when it's already such a selfless occupation and we show up in the pursuit of service
And they don't
to our
get paid
community.
enough. I'll say it.
Yeah.
They don't get paid enough for what they do. My God.
Yeah. We have some amazing rock star teachers on our staff who bend over backwards, go above and beyond in ways I've never seen teachers do in my 10 years in the field. And so, I felt a lot of that, like wanting to protect my staff and my students and myself, and it's like when you now have thrown in threats against the safety of those of us who are in school buildings day in and day out, now there's an added layer of complexity to the job that is already like very, very complex.
Yeah, y'all signed up to educate and teach students, not be
Not be human body shields
or
Oh,
shields
no.
or find out like a plan of action and Sorry to interrupt. I was watching some of the students' videos from their phones from the
Mm-hmm.
Michigan shooting last month when Ethan Crumbley went in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw two different videos. One video, I don't know where the teacher was, or I don't know, but all of the kids were like hiding up under the desks and all the lights were
Yeah.
out. And the door was closed, and there was a voice on the other side of the door, and it was saying, it's okay, it's safe, go ahead and come on out, like trying to be
Mm-mm.
the police. And the kids were just kind of like, okay, well, maybe we should go, you know.
Yeah.
And you have the teacher like, I don't
Yeah.
know, you
What
know
do
what
I
I mean, I'm
do?
just as scared as y'all, but
Yeah.
you're seen as the adult in the situation, and the kids are looking at them like, what do we do? Meanwhile, you have a teacher like, I'm just here to teach, I'm not here to
Yeah.
come up with like a plan of action. And
Yeah.
so the voice on the other side of the door says, it's okay, bro. And then all of a sudden the kids were
Oh
like,
no.
he said, bro, we
Uh-uh.
gotta go, we gotta go. And they start leaping over
Oh.
desks, trying to get through the window and like
Mm-hmm.
run. And it's just like, as a teacher, how do you make that call? You know what I mean? Thank God
Yeah.
someone caught on like, oh no, an officer would never say, bro, that's him,
Yeah. 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 And uh we hope, we run these drills all the time in the event that these things go down. And it is such a scary thing because you don't want to freak students out by practicing for an event like this. But it is so imperative that, it just is the thing that I carry with me in my backpack every day that I go into work. And I am not a police officer. I am not, in the army, in the infantry, right? Like this is not a part of the job that I signed up for. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, in today's times, it comes with the territory for any educator.
Mhm.
You look back across all of the incidents we've had really, since Columbine, and not to say that, well, essentially Columbine was the flagship for
And that's
mass
like
school
us
shooting.
millennials, that's the big one
Yeah.
like that we
Yeah.
remember when we were kids.
Yeah, I remember my mom getting ready for work. I'm up getting ready for school, and this being on the news.
Mhm.
And I had never, I don't think any of us before that had ever even equated schools and mass shootings,
Mhm.
for schools to be a breeding place for these kinds of things to happen. And we've seen all kinds of different grade levels and ages affected by yahoos or yahoos, however
Like
you
the
want to
Sandy
pronounce
Hook,
it.
those babies, weren't they like
Yeah,
in
those were
kindergarten or
babies.
something?
They were
Oh my
babies.
gosh, I cried. I
Yeah,
cried. I know the
yeah.
babies were so
So,
scared. Jeez.
yeah, I can't imagine, and so I just, today I really also I want to take a closer look at the Ethan Crumbley situation. For those of you who have not heard, Ethan Crumbley was a student in high school. He had been charged as an adult with 1 count of terrorism, 4 counts of first-degree murder, and seven counts of assault with intent to murder. And then to top it all off, 12 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony for the incident of the gunfire at Oxford High School in Michigan on November 30th. This incident where Ethan essentially was in the principal's office or whatever administrator being interviewed about a gun, his parents pretty much just kind of scoffed at the fact that they were asked to come in for this and interviewed. And really, it just wasn't, it appeared that they did not take it seriously. It was such a low risk kind of investigation that the school staff did that they actually sent him back to class. Like his parents did not take him home for that day. And I will stop and let's just dissect that piece right there. I asked my mom, I literally called her and I said, Mom, if the school called you and said, hey, there's been rumor of, or there is talk of your student possessing a firearm or searching for ammo on the internet, or I know that my parents would have taken me home immediately. And my mom confirmed that. She said, I absolutely would have taken you home. I don't think I would have been, or you would have been in that situation to begin with. But to find out that, he had been interviewed and there was a parent meeting that happened prior to him actually carrying out his plan.
Mm-hmm.
His parents were there and did not ring him up by the back of his neck. And this is a huge point of contention for me as someone who is currently, practicing in the field of education. It is a trend that I'm seeing where schools are really moving into this position of needing to partner with families and parents and community members so that we can leverage the relationships, the institutional knowledge that our community members have on who our students are, what they need to thrive, and how best we can show up and serve them. And so, it used to be that, and probably our parents' age, that if their parents got a call from the school, their parents automatically believed what the teacher said, little Johnny did or did not do. We're now in a space where we are dealing with community members, family members, really second guessing the judgment, the calls that school staff are making on different things that kids will or will not do during a school day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really turned into having to really, really have all your facts, checked, double checked, triple checked before you call a parent. Because there are a lot of situations where the parent will question the adult who has made the decision that your student has, crossed a couple boundaries. This isn't the first or second time. I'm now calling you and bringing you into partner because it's more of a consistent thing. And that is a tough thing to deal with, Courtney. This is what we were trained to do. We are trained professionals. And I feel sometimes that goes by the wayside. There's this stigma around education that those who can't do teach, right? And that it is this less glamorous or an undesirable occupation in this country. But the work that we do day in and day out is so important and integral to our society. We are training up the next generation of humans that are going to lead our race, right? Globally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, talk to me a little bit about that. This is kind of where I want to get your spin on if you had been called in as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have done in that situation?
Well, just listening to you talk, I could just imagine as an educator, you either get one or two parents that are either defensive when you call, or they're just dismissive altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten called, and granted, my child is 4 years old, and I haven't got any calls, but I have, done pickups where it was when we had to talk to him today, you know what I mean? And of course, your child was like, I didn't do that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, and it's you think my little angel would never.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then you have to think rationally. These people are with my child for 8 hours a day. They spend a lot of time with my child. They're going to see things that I'm not going to see.
Yeah.
There's also the aspect of, even though I'm teaching my child something in the home and these are my expectations, he's also going to school with a lot of other children, a lot of other influences that are also teaching him things. So it could be that my child never says anything about this kind of stuff at home, but once he gets to school, it's a whole different environment. So he could very well be doing those things. So me and my child would have went home.
End of story.
End of story.
And y'all would have seen him. Yeah. And he would have come back when I felt he was ready to return.
Because maybe we need to sit down and discuss, what is going on that you felt that you needed to say those things.
Yeah. Well, and then the comment, so continuing to provide context, his So Ethan's parents went on the run after charges were filed against them for 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. This was a direct result of their negligence in giving their son unfettered access to the gun he allegedly, and I say allegedly because he's not been convicted yet, but to the gun, they gave him access to the gun. They bought it for him. He's a 15-year-old
So
child.
was it registered to dad or mom, and then they like slid it to him, or he was in the room meddling? Like, how did he get it?
No, it was his gun. It's his gun. And this was the gun that he used. They purchased it for him. That right there is why they went on, right? Like, for a whole host of reasons, but they gave him access to that. And his mom, you know, some of you may have been reading the articles and things like that, but one of the, like, I think most well-known kind of points of this whole case or situation with his parents is that mom, you know, her text message records showed that she had said, "I'm not mad that you were searching for ammo on whatever, you know, platform you were searching for ammo on. I'm just mad you got caught." And that statement right there, yep, I won't say that, but that statement right there just infuriates me, because you as a parent in that moment could have made a different decision. And I know that we are imperfect human beings, but, you know, like I was explaining a few minutes ago, there is just this trend of, I'm going to believe my student 100% before I believe you, the school employee. And I'm going to put this, this disclaimer in there. I am not saying that schools across this country, I know we are in the midst of trying to dismantle systems of oppression in education, especially for marginalized communities and underserved populations, basically Black and Brown students across this nation. We are trying so hard to close the equity holes and gaps that we see for our underserved youth. And we know that we don't get it perfect every time. This is not me saying that, you know, parents should just take schools at face value. But before pointing the finger or assuming, you know, worst intent, go in with curiosity. You know, if there are parents listening on this episode, that would probably be my biggest push, because I can see that his parents probably did not enter that conversation with the principal and their son before he went and did this mass shooting at his school. I can see that his parents probably did not go in there with the right attitude, did not go in there with an open mind and interrogate the actions of their student. It looks like, to me, a professional in this field, that they went in and armored up. And what that means is they threw up their defenses, shut out what the school was saying and trying to communicate with them. And then just, you know, obviously this tragic incident happened. Folks lost their lives.
And that annoys me, like putting a wall up and getting defensive over the wrong things. And to me, it's like, if the school is calling you about your child, something of importance, whether it be a behavior issue, whatever it is, yes, it's human nature to be defensive and you want to turn up and defend your child, but let's turn up and defend our children over the stuff that matters. Like,
that really
the
matters.
School's not following, you know, their IEP, you know what I mean?
Yes.
The things that we really need to advocate for our children, which things that do happen, not, he didn't hit so-and-so. And it's like, well, no, yes, he did. I watched him hit him yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. Could have been prevented.
Yeah. You know, and I think that's probably just I am working on using more affirmative language when I speak. I know that the whole thing could have been prevented. You know, they talk about how his parents actually went on the run. Like, they were evading law enforcement, like
because
hiding. They knew. And it is so tough. There are different situations going on, at the place that I work where safety has been compromised for students and staff. When we're talking about the TikTok challenge, I actually had a teacher who received a threat like late in the night from a student who threatened to bomb our school. And so, I am very closely attached and deeply invested in this conversation, because the only remedy to this kind of stuff is more communication. Different folks might say, oh, well, you need to have metal protectors and cameras, but actually, in working with some folks who have worked in tougher schools, tougher neighborhoods where there is much more violence and conflict, that's actually not the answer. Putting those kinds of things in place actually more so encourage the violent behavior, right? Like encourage students trying to figure out, can I get this weapon past the metal detector,
And
right?
it's scary. It's scary
Mhm.
because, there's ghost guns now
What is
that
a
are
ghost gun?
ghost. Okay, so a regular,
Really?
yeah, and a lot of times they're plastic. They look like toy guns. So
Yeah.
if you have a gun, right, and if you take the slide off, the
Mhm.
thing that you cock back,
Mhm.
you take off the trigger and the pin, you kind of have like the 80%, like a skeleton, like a frame of a gun, right?
Yeah.
And you can order the pieces. So you can order the pin. And so basically let me start from the beginning. People started making these ghost guns like back in 2009, 2010, whenever they banned like AR-15s.
Mhm.
And so people started acquiring these ghost guns and then just making their own guns. And so you have these private companies that are making these pieces. So if you have a 3D printer, you can make a pin, you can make the
Yeah.
pieces, and you can make the switch. So when you take a handgun and you put a switch on the back of it, that's what makes it the auto, the instead of the
Mhm.
boom, boom, boom. So once you
Mhm.
put that switch on there, that's only $100 right? That you can order and put together. Now you have more of a powerful gun than the authorities have.
Mm.
And so that's a lot of times what people are doing and how they're able to buy them off the street, these whole guns that don't look heavy, they don't look like these metal things, and going into these schools or going into the street and they're using them.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
super, you got to pay attention. Yeah. So
I,
scary.
you know, I just wonder why schools became the place. I wonder why, I can remember being at one school and it was just a regular fire drill. But the conversation that, our administration had with each other before we carried out, the fire drill was that um the custodian would have to, there was something about where she was, like you can easily find the blueprint of whatever school I was at that time. Like you could have found the blueprints wherever. And the thing they were saying was we could not essentially like go to our normal posts in the event that there actually was an intruder on campus who went and pulled the fire alarm with the intent of filling the hallways so that they could cause the most mass destruction in an emergency situation where they know that everybody is going to file out of the classroom or funnel out of the classrooms into the hallways. That is the level of danger that school employees across this nation are facing. And I don't know who did this whole TikTok challenge or this warning, whatever you want to call it, but there are human beings, innocent human beings on the line here. Their lives are on the line. And for what reason? And this is where I also want to kind of get you talking about kind of the mental health side of things. What has to be going on for people, for humans, let's say specifically in Ethan Crumbley's situation, or any other student who, like in the case of, with the exception of bullying, right? Because I think that is potentially a different field, right? If there's excessive extreme bullying going on and things like that, I'm not saying that it's right for school shootings to happen, but and even I don't know, maybe even in bullying situations, what is the psychology behind a person who would take a weapon into a school, a sacred place of learning and exploration, and have an intent to harm unassuming souls who have no idea that this threat is even coming their way? What is going on in the mind of someone who does something like that?
Well, I think that's been the conversation for years now. Is it mental health that's causing these school shootings and these mass shootings? Or is it the weapons themselves? And I think that's what's been the conversation, like what's to blame, you know?
Hmm.
And I've never met any of these children. I haven't met any, I mean, I haven't been in the minds to talk to the people who've caused these issues to know, like, if there was something going on. Because for all we
Mhm.
know, you know, he could have a relatively normal affect when you meet somebody.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't know that they're gonna go in and shoot somebody. You know, they might read and present as a well-rounded person. I
Mm.
could sit down with Ethan and he can present extremely well. And after having a conversation with him and establishing a baseline, there's nothing there. He looks like a normal, well-rounded kid. But this
Yeah.
same child can be the child that takes the lives of what, 8, 9, 10 people?
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
never know. I mean, of course, I mean, you can assume things like depression or they were had traits of something, but you just never know if it was
Yeah.
something underlying, if it was something, or if it was bullying, or they didn't know they're experimenting. You just never know. You never
Yeah.
know. And I think that when I was saying it talks about the conversation, is it the weapon itself or is it mental health? I think that's the real question here. And when we as a society and as America can answer that, I think we'll move closer to a solution and decreasing all of these deaths.
Hmm. It's a great answer. Um, it makes me think about, and I know this is, the pandemic sent folks into quarantine, and different states had different, guidelines around whether or not it was okay to reopen schools. And for us, in Washington, we didn't reopen for until spring of last year. And there were different places that opened up way earlier. But one thing we've seen, and especially being in Washington State, the terrain there, the geographic location, it is dark and gloomy, gray skies, tall, towering evergreen trees. And that is our reality. And rain, great, like the sun is a rare blessing that we all soak up when it comes out in the wintertime. And so we know that that already plays a role in mental health. But then to have added on the isolation that students and the lack of social connection that students were experiencing while they were forced to do school online and virtual, it just threw, and I know it's thrown schools across the country, school staff across the country, it has thrown us into just we're playing a different game right now. And the reason being is because we are not licensed mental health professionals. We do not have the capability to cross over into that realm of things, but we also are facing such a high need. I mean, the Surgeon General, I think I was reading a couple weeks ago where he essentially said, like, we just came out, we are in a pandemic, but the next potential, like, major health crisis we could see across this country is surrounding teens and mental health,
Mhm.
because they have been so damaged and negatively affected by the conditions, the circumstances of quarantine
And
for so
it
long.
needs to be addressed. And
Yeah.
what I was noticing, and you may be able to answer, tell me why, in a lot of schools, I see you have the counselors, right? But I see the
Girl, don't get me
counselors
started.
doing things, and I mean, and you can say whatever you can say, because I know you're an administrator, or answer why it is how it is. But why just with the level of violence, the level of turmoil that a lot of our teenagers are going through, just because, I mean, everything is changing, you know what I mean? Puberty, their brains are developing, they're being exposed to so many things. And with the suicide rate just being so high, especially after the pandemic, like you said, we've had one of our highest couple of years in a long, long time. Why is it that in the majority of the schools, we have the counselors, but the counselors are, and I'll just speak for myself. My counselor when I was in
Please
high
do.
school was scheduling my classes for next term, making sure I knew how to apply for a scholarship. Why is it that we don't have actual social workers that we can help you pick your, you know, your next classes and do all that case management stuff, get you all set up, but we can also do actual therapy to tap into some of this stuff before it starts brewing?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Is it like a budget issue? Is it
Oh,
that they
girl.
don't like, what is, I'm just wondering, like you said, you have the counselors, like, counselor, you're just
Yeah.
scheduling my classes, like you ain't counseling, like what?
Yeah, I am just gonna say whoever is listening to this, if you're an educator, you'll understand what I'm getting ready to say. In education and budget are synonymous. They just are, right? Whenever there is a lack of something in education, it is typically due to there being a lack of funding. When there's a problem, we'll solve it as long as we've got the funds to do it, right?
Oh,
And if it is dire enough of a situation, we will absolutely like find the money somewhere.
mhm.
But that is the battle in education, is that we are always underfunded. I don't care if you are working for a traditional school district and you receive most of your money from the federal government, or you're a private school on the other end of the spectrum and you receive most of your money from private donations and tuition fees, or if you're somewhere in the middle, like a charter school who collects money from both ends of the spectrum, right? And so, you know, this year in particular, we were able to receive extra funding. Our organization got some funding for COVID, and this is the same with schools across the country. The conditions were just that you had to be open, right? So in order to receive that money, you had to be open and having kids back in your building.
And I'm
And
glad and you know what? I'm glad you said that, because that's the behind the scenes stuff.
yeah,
Bless these teachers' hearts and bless the parents, because I could see both sides, because my best friend is an educator and I'm a mama. So I can, you know, I feel it. And
yeah,
man, them parents were roasting y'all for having
girl,
them schools open. But now y'all
girl.
understand why. Like they didn't necessarily want to, in order to
Mhm.
get the coins to buy y'all baby some books. They had to.
Girl. I'm
Anyways, I
glad you said it
digress.
for
Go
me.
ahead.
Yeah, but it's true, right? Like we had, you know, and I think just across, and I'm not even gonna go down this rabbit hole, but I will just say that, you know, when you are not working in schools, you will never understand the full picture. There are so many things happening behind the scenes, and we cannot always speak to what
Mhm,
is going on.
mhm.
We also have regulations in place to protect the privacy of students and staff and family and the inner workings of our system. We cannot always disclose all information as badly as community members and parents and X, Y, and Z may want them, our key stakeholders. So that in itself is its own statement I'm making. You know, before rushing to judgment about decisions that schools or school districts are or are not making, you always have to think to yourself that I don't have perfect information. Although I'm looking at the external actions or variables in this situation, I also, as a parent, as a key stakeholder who has a vested interest in the youth attending whatever school that, you know, your youth or your child attend, you always have to know you do not have perfect information. I think that's been one of the most useful tools or keys that I've learned as a leader. You know, I might have a teacher come tell me a story and be ready to go and get after another staff member or a student for doing X, Y, and Z. But before I do that, I have to tell myself I don't have all the pieces. So I got to go and get curious about the other person's side of the story before I act, before I react. I can respond, which means I go and do my fact checking and do my investigations, or I can react and just go based off of what this one person told me. So
what do
I
parents
guess
need to do to be proactive then instead of reactive? Like, are we pushing legislation? Are we going to school board meetings? Like,
I
what
think
can
all of
parents
it,
do?
all of it, all of it. But I think the most important thing that I have seen that actually moves the needle and actually builds partnership between home and school is getting in there, right? Like I have worked at elementary schools and I've worked now in a high school. The biggest change from elementary to high school, less parent involvement. There's less parent involvement because there is an assumption that, oh, because my student is now 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, they don't need me as much. While that is true in some circumstances, it is not true all the way around. Students still need their parents in their education, even as high school students. So if that means that one day a month I go and I just am present on campus, you know, I talk to my administration or my administrators and I say, hey, I want to be an active, involved parent. Can I come and just do a shadow with my student? Or I don't even have to shadow them in their classes, but I just want to be here and volunteer. Whatever you need me to do, I'm here. Right?
Oh, they don't necessarily have to understand, because I hear that excuse a lot. This new math, and I don't know how to do all this extra stuff, and I can't help my child. But what you're saying is it doesn't have to always be like getting in the books. It can be that social and emotional support that they might need.
Yeah. Other things like if you've got a trade that you do that you would love to teach kids, like also like, hey, I've got this thing that I love to do. I'd love to run an after school program. What I'm saying, the overarching theme of what I'm saying right now is regardless of a student being in middle or high school, they still need you just as much as they needed you when they were in pre-K or kindergarten or their elementary primary years. It may look different, but they still need you. And here's the other piece. School staff, we need you. We need you to partner with us. We need you to not make judgments about the things that we are saying are or are not occurring with your students. We need you to get in there and grapple with us, because as much as we are trained professionals in our field, we also don't have all the answers, right? And sometimes there just are blind spots, both for parents and for school employees, that we can't see. And it takes the vantage point of both sides to fill in those gaps so that we are able to reach the whole student, which is what education is all about at this current time. I think we've looked at the evolution of education in our country. And it's a good thing that education is evolving. But we also have to, the parent and family and caregiver partnership with the school also has to evolve. And I think that is the answer that you were asking about.
In Louisiana, I think it's Louisiana. I'm gonna find it and put it in the show notes so that everyone could read the article. They have this program. It's a high school and it's called like Dads on Duty. And it's all like, it's a bunch of dads, Black dads. Bunch of Black dads, yeah. And they just take turns, they have their little rotation and they're just they go to the school. So they're walking around like, in the courtyard and just checking in on the kids. How you doing? You know what I mean? Not necessarily being like the guards, how like the school guards that they hire to just make sure you're not running, in class. It's not like that. It's a more of a warm, friendly, you know what I mean? And what they saw at that high school is a lot of the violence, all that crazy stuff went down because they had that presence of all of these dads, you know what I mean? And it was so powerful, all of these Black dads coming together. And the kids knew that they were always going to be there, not necessarily as to don't stop running, don't do this, but more so as, even though they were there, yes, for safety, right, to make sure nothing would go down, but more so just as a a presence for the kids, like, hey, I got you, you having a bad day. And if they did get out of line, you know, there was the dad right down the hall, like, hey, now, you know what I mean? Things quickly, things quickly settled down, you know that, simmer down, they grabbed their little backpacks, they went on to class, you know, they didn't have them kind of problems. And so I think that's a perfect example of, you know, they didn't necessarily have this specific trade, you know what I mean, or specific talent, quote unquote talent to teach the kid, but just their mere presence and being involved did so much for that school.
Yeah, that's such a monumental point that you made, right? I think that the other piece that we have to examine closely is that sometimes the experiences of the parents of our students with schools as institutions were not positive, right? So as we're talking about how education is evolving and where we are doing deep dives into equitable practices for all students, but more specifically for Black and Brown students who have been oppressed by archaic systems in education that are deeply rooted in white supremacy and white supremacist ideologies, right? Education in America was not made for Black and Brown kids to be successful.
That's why all of these children in these lower socioeconomic areas have books that are outdated. They don't have the right equipment. A lot more of those teachers are having to come out of pocket to buy supplies, pencils, just basic things that children need. And let's factor in salary, you know what I mean? They're not always getting paid what they should be paid.
Yeah. But, you know, the point you were making about it doesn't take you working for Microsoft or Amazon and coming in and running an after school program. I'm so glad that you made that point about sometimes, you know, you may not have much to offer, but you just being there. You just being there in the space, letting kids know, hey, I see you. Hey, it's nice to see you. Welcome back. It's so good to have you here. Hey, man, sit down and talk to me about your dreams and your aspirations, right? Sometimes that's all kids need to get themselves to do like the adjustment, to have that course correction, right? Like to just get back on the right track. To have a listening ear. And you talked earlier about counselors. And the point that I didn't make earlier was, you know, we got a lot of that COVID funding, but I don't think any educator across this country could have anticipated the need for mental health supports in schools. Right now at my school, we've got 2 therapists across like 500 and some odd kids. And they are true therapists. And the way that we have positioned them is more so as social workers to try and, yes, take on as many kids as they can. But honestly, the need is so great. They also have to be well-versed in connecting students and families with outside agencies in their immediate community that can do wraparound services, that can provide mental health supports. And that's what we're facing. It's no longer
nail on the head. That's why you have social workers who are trained to be culturally competent, that know what works for one person is not going to work for the other. They're trained to know about these wraparound services. But at the same time, 2 therapists for 500 children, that is not sustainable. They can effectively do their job. They can effectively circle back and make sure that they were able to connect with those resources. They can effectively check on their mental health and then see each child at least once or twice a week. Just doing the bare minimum. The bare minimum. But what can you do if you don't have the funding?
What can you do, right? And those 2 are doing everything they like in their human power to show up and serve our kids with excellence and consistency. But even then, right? And so when we're talking about making judgments about how a school does or does not operate, as I said earlier, there are so many unseen variables that the outside community cannot see and that we cannot always disclose. And so I think, you know, my biggest point as we're coming, you know, to a close is for those of you who are parents. I'm not a parent, but I have educated hundreds of kids across the country in the last 10 years. And so I feel, by proxy, like I am they say in education, it is what's the saying? In locus parentis, but basically it means in place of the parent. And so although I'm not your biological parent, I am for 8 hours every single day for 180 days a year, your guardian, the person who is,
I'm feeding your child when your child comes to school with
good,
a
bad,
bag of
ugly,
chips
or
in their
indifferent.
lunchbox or nothing at all.
Yeah.
I'm a bodyguard if they come in there because I'm the one making decisions to keep your child from getting hurt. Number one, I'm a counselor. I'm a social worker. I'm
an advocate.
I'm an advocate.
I'm a tutor. I'm a mentor. I'm a counselor. I am whatever your student plus how many other students need me to be that day in that moment when they need me, right? And the same thing goes for classroom teachers. They are the same. And so instead of, like I said, when we started this episode, we cannot continue pointing fingers. We have to come together and partner. And so, that is my call to action for any of our listeners on this episode is if you've not called your student's homeroom teacher or one of your student, one of their teachers, I encourage you to do that after winter break is over. Call them, if you've not sent a thank you card or haven't inquired about how you can get in there and volunteer, even if all it is once or twice a month, it is welcomed. It is needed as we are trying to really figure out how to meet the needs of all of our students and our families. Reach out. Even if no one from the school has called you, I guarantee you there is no school in this country that would not welcome the inquiry from families and parents.
I want to say, how can I help? And I know, and as much chatter that I saw on Facebook today about this TikTok challenge, all these parents who were just doing all this buzzing, you know what I mean? Let's have that same energy and that same conversation, and let's call the school and say, what can we do? How can we help? Safety is a real concern for our children. Safety is a real concern for my child. What can I do? Because I'm sure you can be more effective by calling the school and just asking the questions than on Facebook.
This doesn't work by just getting your kid to school. That is not where the bounds of this partnership start and end. It is an ongoing cycle of reflection on things that are and are not going well. It is an ongoing communication and conversation of how to impact change in our schools for our students, and more specifically for our students of color. It is a two-way relationship and conversation that has to continue. And so, she's, I hope that if you are a parent listening to this, or even an aunt or an uncle or sibling, whoever you are to a student who is currently going through our education system in America, be it traditional, private, or charter, get in there, ask questions, partner with your schools.
It's a collaborative effort. Education is a collaborative effort. It's not just the job of the school. It's collaborative.
Yes. So, all right, she's well, that is it for this episode. It has been a pleasure. I feel so much lighter after having had this conversation. I've been walking around really heavy the past couple weeks, just honestly since the Ethan Crumbley situation happened, and then this TikTok challenge just did not help things. But it was therapy for me to come in and have this conversation with you today.
Well, I'm glad you got to, because you're on the other side. I mean, you really can't say anything because you're an educator,
I know. I remember I texted you this past, I don't remember what I told you happened. Actually, I do. Not this past Friday, but the Friday before. And you were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
Oh yeah.
But it just has been really cathartic for me to be able to just process and have this conversation with you. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Are you about to cry?
No, I'm not gonna
Oh,
cry.
about to say, oh, girl.
No, those moments, no, I've had one or two of those in the past couple weeks. But no, I'm good. I feel much better now that I was able to get the things that I was kind of like processing and thinking through internally. Because, as a leader, you can't always share everything with it, your
And
teacher.
I want people to really listen. And if you enjoyed what you heard, share this episode with other parents that you may know. Just so you can kind of get the perspective from the eyes of an educator, and see, just kind of like the behind the scenes. Even though you didn't get a lot, you got little good nuggets of consideration. So
Yeah. And I'm just going to plug this for teachers across the country. Parents, if you have $5, go get your child's teacher a Starbucks card or whatever, an energy drink, anything, just to say thank you, because this job is hard. We are public servants, and teachers show up day in and day out with one common goal in mind, and that is to position our young folks to be compassionate, empathetic, strong social leaders, social justice leaders of change in this country. And they don't get there without us, without educators. So, if you haven't done something nice, for your student's teacher ever, or maybe just not this year, take a minute, stop by the store, get them a card, send them a virtual Starbucks card, something, and just say thank you. And also ask the question, how can I help you?
Oh, and then before we also wrap up, I want to shout out my homegirl, Sierra Burns. She's also an educator, and I'm going to drop her Cash App in the show notes. So if you guys can follow and support her. So she actually has like this, she teaches Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and she has like this little math store, and she has snacks and chips and Gatorades and food
I love it
for these kids. You know what I mean?
Yes, girl, because they're hungry.
Yeah. So feeding the kids. And then I believe sometimes it's free, or she charges like 75 cents for the items, but then she turns around and gives the money right back to the kids.
Back to the store.
Yeah. So shout out to her. I mean, I know she does so much for those kids, and she's just a prime example of just really being a mama. Feeding your kids, teaching your kids, being, that social and emotional support. So shout out to her and all the other teachers. Barbara, she's another person that I've seen like some of our stuff on our page. She's another teacher too. Shout out to her.
Hey girl.
All the teachers. Shout out to all y'all. I see y'all.
Teacher love. My heart
Anybody
is
else
with
I
you.
may have missed too. I don't think. Do we know any other teachers? Shout out to all your teachers at your school.
Yes, they know. Yes, I get down with my teachers for sure. They know for sure. I got their backs. So, all right, y'all. Well, this brings our episode to a close. It has been a joy for you. Yes. Hope you enjoy it. And how can we, I want y'all to send us some messages about this episode. What did you think about it? What resonated with you? What was an aha? What's a wondering? What's something that you want to stop doing?
Or even if you disagree with anything we said, I want to know, and I want to know why.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Because I
would love.
Yeah, I want to know from a parent's perspective too, an older parent,
Yeah. I would love to do maybe a follow-up to this one, because it's such a controversial topic. So yeah, let us know what y'all think.
Oh, this is juicy. This is juicy.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, well, let's wrap it on up. Thank you, guys. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like and share. Definitely share, because YouTube be acting kind of shady. If you say one wrong thing, they will shadow ban your stuff. So please share it, because YouTube won't. But if you're on Spotify and all that, please leave us a review, comment, share.
Yes, for sure.
All right, until next time. Bye.
Bye.